Hello everyone, welcome to the community interviews, and we are here in Microsoft Ignite, the tour in London, and I have here Pierre Roman with me. Hello Pierre.
How you doing?
Yeah.
Hey everyone.
Great to have you here.
Thanks. It's great to be here. Actually, as long as there's no snow, I'm happy.
Yeah, so first, if you can give us an introduction about yourself and what you are doing and where are you based actually?
Okay, so about myself. My name is Pierre Roman. I'm Canadian. I've been in IT industry for about 30 years. I'm aging myself a little here.
Wow.
And I've done pretty much everything from first level help desk to director of a multinational for all IT operations. Now I work for Microsoft. I've been Microsoft 15 years, and I'm in the DevRel, so Developer Relations Group. However, I cover infrastructure operations for cloud and hybrid. So it's all of the operations side of cloud computing and hybrid computing that I cover right now as a cloud advocate.
That's fantastic. So can you give us an introduction about your session that you are going to deliver?
Okay, so I got 3 sessions this week. The first this morning was a theater session, so 15 minutes rapid fire on things you need to keep top of mind when you're securing your IaaS environment.
Yeah.
So virtual machines, virtual networks, what are the things that you need to think about in terms of securing that environment? It's not about securing the OS, it's about securing not only the control plane, so the Azure environment, as to who has access to modify the security settings and security controls that you may have put into your environment, securing that, the VMs themselves, the network, how do you access it, because when you're putting something in the cloud, it's literally on the internet.
Yeah.
It's in the cloud, so there's extra things that you need to think about, but all of the best practice that we've all learned on-prem are still absolutely valid.
That's
because IaaS is an extension of your data center. You have to deal with those machines and those resources the same as you would on-prem.
Yes, that's great.
So that was the first session. The second session is going to be the last one today. Again, another theater session, which is very quick. Again, rapid fire. My top Windows 2019 features.
Yes.
So what I love about them, why I find they're very important, and where I think they're going to give the best bang for the buck.
Yeah, that's great.
And tomorrow, first session tomorrow, is how to integrate and to manage your IaaS operations.
Yeah.
So how to manage it, how to support it, how to patch it, how to secure it and back it up, and all of the stuff that you need to do, but when you're dealing strictly with an IaaS environment.
Yes, and how you see the future for this part?
So the future, depending on who you're listening to, can go multiple different ways. The way I look at it is for the next decade, we are going to be in a hybrid model.
Yeah.
So companies have a lot of investments on-prem. They're going to the cloud. The speed at which they're going to go to the cloud, it depends on the companies themselves. It depends on the regulatory environment that these companies work in. It depends on the amount of resources that they can throw at migrating to the cloud, or developing new application, because we're all stuck with, let's say, the stuff that nobody wants to deal with, legacy applications that may not work the way you want them in cloud, that may not be built to support things like elastic scaling. So if you've got applications that don't support elastic scaling, putting them in the cloud is just hosting them in another environment.
Yes.
So now you have to start thinking, it's not just about putting it in the cloud, is how do I actually modernize it to be able to start taking advantage of cloud technologies, automatic scaling and so on. How do I move a SQL box to Azure? Do I just run it as a VM, SQL on a VM, or can I do PaaS services? Mm-hmm. There are some advantages of going to PaaS services in terms of cost, in terms of scaling, in terms of management, because you don't have to worry about patching the VM itself. You just have to worry about your database. But there are restrictions, such as, for example, you can't run reporting services
Yeah.
in PaaS environment. So how do you deal with all that? You really have to understand where your applications are, how they work together, all of the little nitty-gritty details that you're looking at to be able to figure out how you're moving those to the cloud. So in terms of how I see this going,
Yes, exactly.
it's a hard one. It's a hard question because there's no silver bullet. There's no one answer for everyone. It all depends as to which company you're working with. However, that being said, there are things that people in on-prem, administrators and architects that are working with on-prem environments, that they can start leveraging some cloud services to help them with stuff that is still on-prem. Azure Monitor, Azure Backup, Azure Site Recovery, all services that can help them manage better the environment they have on-prem without committing to moving all these workloads to the cloud.
Yeah.
So in the next 10 years, I think we're going to see a good mix of on-prem and cloud, but using cloud services to alleviate some of the business problems that you may have on-prem. New companies, startups or companies that are starting from scratch, they don't have that legacy. They don't have that workload, those workloads that they need to keep the lights on. They're starting from scratch. So what's the point of developing and architecting and deploying something on-prem when you can, from the get-go, take advantage of some of those cloud services and some of those modern applications and modern ways of doing things that make lives a lot easier. That way, you don't spend all your time fighting fires and keeping lights on. You're becoming more of a resource for the business as to how to plan going forward.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit also what I see in terms of the jobs, because you mentioned before we started recording, what I think as to is it going to steal my job?
Yes, exactly.
So all of you, remember, if your only job is to rack servers and run cables, if that's all you do, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, if that's all you do, then yes, maybe the cloud will affect your job. If you're a system administrator, if you're maintaining and developing and deploying systems on-prem, your job is not going to go away. So if your job, like our collective knowledge of security, compliance, deployment, monitoring, management, all of that is still very, very, very much relevant, even more in a cloud environment, because if you get developers or startups that are putting stuff into the cloud without thinking about all of those things, all those areas that are super crucial, especially like in Europe with GDPR. So how do you manage the data? How do you manage the backup? How do you manage the disaster recovery? That is still very much relevant, and developer side of the house may not be aware of all that's available to them to support their application. So IT operations, very much alive and well.
That's great.
And will remain that way.
I think this is very great, and people will really like to hear that. So if we go now, the change is too fast. You know, we don't have time to learn everything, and it seems like a bit complicated to understand. And you know, so how about adopting these new technologies from the business and from individuals?
Okay, so that I understand, and I feel that problem every day, because my job is to learn all of those and to basically bring that to the communities, and then get back the feedback from the communities to bring back to the product group to say this not working, or our documentation. So it's a both way community. I have to learn all of these all the time, and it changes so rapidly.
Yes.
There are some content that I created for Ignite that has already changed. So now I got to go back and update my decks and update my demos. It's never going to stop.
Yeah,
if anything, it's going to accelerate. So my recommendation, advice is take it one chunk at a time. Figure out one business problem that you have to fix. Research that business problem and what can address it. go to blogs, ask communities on Facebook, on Twitter. There are a number of
Yes.
user groups and so on. So ask around, do some research on docs.microsoft.com or MS Learn on that one problem.
Yes.
Then learn that problem, learn how to address it,
Yes.
and then do a POC, deploy it. Then you move on to the next one. So don't try to proactively learn everything, because you're only going to end up being a generalist and not being able to really drill down to all of the pieces that are required. So don't look at it as a whole. Take one business problem at a time, address it, use the proper services, learn those, implement them, and then move on to the next one.
Yes. People reaching out to me, asking me, I'm a developer or a tester. Is this enough? Should I learn anything else? Or, I mean, this part of...
That's an interesting question, because in my environment, I get the other way around, where IT professionals keep asking me, so I'm an IT pro, do I need to become a developer? Well, in a way, and don't take that the wrong way, we are all kind of developers. We write PowerShell scripts, we write Bash scripts, we write automation routines. This is a development.
Yeah.
We use GitHub for our script. We use developer tools to support operation environments. So it's funny that you were asking the different ways.
Yeah.
Developers and QA engineers, or regardless on which side, you have to be specific and deep in what you're doing, but you also have to be a bit of a generalist about everything else that is relevant to it. So if you're developing in .NET application and you're deploying this to cloud, well, how does operation comes into play? How does disaster recovery comes into play? How does backing up the data from your application? Like, you at least need to have a fundamental understanding of everything that's related to the deployment. So yes, if you're a dev or a QA, you need to learn a few more things on the operation side of things. But the flip side is, if you are in operations, you need to learn a few things about how the development cycle actually works. And that way, we'll all understand each other a little better.
Yes.
And that kind of opens up all kinds of different doors.
Yes, I think this fills the gaps between both of them, the dev and the operation.
Yeah, it does fill the gap. And I do think that together, like if you're looking at, for example, DevOps.
Yeah.
If you're looking at DevOps principles, the biggest thing about DevOps, it's not about the technology, is about bringing people together at the beginning of a project.
Yes.
So that the devs, the architects, the business leaders, and the operations work together to actually plan out what it's going to require in terms of how many resources am I going to need, how much is that going to cost me, how am I going to deal with it, like all of these things. As opposed to the old days where developers, architects would work on their side and then they'd be done and they'd pass over to operation and say, okay, here's the application, now deploy it.
Yeah.
And then they would say, well, it's not working as expected, it's not as fast. Well, maybe because the sizing wasn't done properly up front, because operation was not involved in the conversation.
Yes.
So I am an IT pro, I will always be an IT pro, but I want to make sure that I understand the other side of the house and work very closely with them anyway.
Yes, great. So some advices for the students. What's your advice for a student and fresh graduates to join big companies? I got reach all this type of question all the time from communities.
Yes, and that's not new. That's been around for a long time. Number one, involve yourself in communities.
Yes.
Meetups, user groups, those types of events and gathering will, first of all, you will learn from other people that have experience, that are in those positions. You will make business connections with those people.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll get a short contract. Maybe you'll get some experience. Because let's not kid ourselves, if you're like straight out of university, there are some positions available, but it's not everyone's going to be covered in that.
Yeah.
So Involve yourself in communities, involve yourselves in like maybe some open source projects, especially if you're a developer. Start building a resume of stuff you've done.
Yes.
Whether or not it's done pro bono as part of a group, whether it's a test environment, whether it's any kind of learning that you've done outside of school. So start building yourself a resume in terms of not just my formal college education, but also what I've done outside of it.
Yeah.
That's number 1 and 2. Number 3 is don't be afraid to ask those people in the communities, hey, I'm fresh out of college. What do you recommend? What do you think I should go? What's hot in your environment right now? And we, as IT pros and developers, are never going to stop learning. If we're never going to stop learning. If you think that because you're done college that your learning days are over, you're in the wrong business. The only constant in IT is the change.
Yeah.
So that's not going to change forever.
Okay, so what is your golden tip to pass an interview?
My golden tip to pass an interview is do your research.
Yes.
Figure out what the business is about. Read, if they are a public company, read all of their financial statements. Try to figure out what their big rocks are, like in terms of what they concentrate on, what they, and then try to put yourself in the mindset of, at the interview, say, oh yes, I noticed or I read about these projects or these applications you're running or these campaigns or whatever it may be, as much information as you can get, and try to offer your perspective on how they can maybe benefit from something that you know that they may not, or something that you've read that other companies have been successful with, and ask the right questions.
Yeah.
Don't ask how much vacation am I going to get and what my paycheck's going to be. That's a kiss of death in an interview.
Yeah.
More as to what do you think? How do you think your cloud adoption is going to affect your current staffing?
Yeah.
Like, ask questions that are relevant to the business,
Yeah.
which makes the
Business
interviewer
Yeah.
feel like you're interested in the business, not just interested in the paycheck.
Yeah.
Which paycheck is good.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong, but you can't. I used to tell students, if you do as a career what you do when you're procrastinating, then you'll never work a day in your life and you'll be happy for your life.
Yeah.
Because if you spend your weekends developing small applications or maybe games or whatever it may be, well, maybe that's the business you should be in. Because you're doing that for free on your spare time because you love it.
Yeah.
And if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
finally, from your experience, how to be a high-performing professional in a company?
there's a great book out there called Linchpin.
Linchpin, yeah.
It's basically the art of making yourself indispensable. As I mentioned earlier, when you get into a specific position, become the expert in that position. Don't think too much as to what my next job is going to be. Become the expert at what you're doing now. Spend extra time, take extra courses, research outside of work, and show the business that you can add value. You're not just doing what's on your job description. You're doing what's on your job description. That's the bottom line. That's you're meeting expectations.
Yeah.
It's everything else that you can do around to exceed expectation. And then once you exceed expectations, you're going to be noticed by your manager. Another trick is make your manager look good.
Yes, thank you. It's really great. Okay, thank you so much for your time. It was really great to have you here, and look forward to seeing you in other events.
I look forward to being back here.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys.